Dr. Glen,
Yes, sir.
we seem to be struggling today getting our intros right.
It's all right, man. It's
Well,
morning. You had a tough morning.
We're going to get this one. So we have a new community question. This one's a solid one. It is, how do I know when I'm being used in a relationship?
It's an important topic too, because you need to learn to set boundaries with people that do not have your best interest.
Yeah. I love the way that you just said that. That was fantastic.
Thanks,
you.
man.
Well, we've prepared 5 different points on this we're going to talk through. Before we get into that, well, let's welcome y'all. Welcome to 12-Week Relationships. This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years. And when we say relationships, we mean all of them, starting with yourself and working out to the people around you. My name is Pye.
I'm Dr. Glen.
And for those that don't know, we'll talk about this more at the end of the episode, but we do have 15-minute consult available with Dr. Glen where he can kind of walk you through exactly what we can do for you. You can hop on to 12weekrelationships.com, sign up for a consult, and now let's get into it.
Let's do it.
After the, sponsored by message. That was the sponsored by. We're sponsored by ourselves.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you know you're being used in a relationship? This is a tricky one because the person asking this question, it sounds like I'm about to say their name. I'm not going to say their name. I'm just saying the person or a person who asked this question is typically going to be the nice guy or the nice gal who inherently kind of, people pleases, doesn't really know whether they're going too far. They're always there to please, right?
Well, it's drawing the line between, being an empathic person and then learning to do things for people, but at the same time, having the boundary to say no because you're just basically just being used.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what I mean though, is like the person that is narcissistic is never going to ask this question to begin with. So you're kind of, in asking this question, you're already a person who is empathic, who is probably, anxious in their relationships, who is probably kind of going to be the nice person, the person that has a hard time saying no. In fact, that might just be our first sign, right?
Yeah, basically you're a nice person and you're a magnet for narcissistic people.
Yeah, you struggled to say no. If you feel guilty saying no, then there's a good chance automatically that you're going to be the person that's getting used in relationships.
Yeah, but I think it's important to also note that it doesn't mean like being an asshole, but these are people that actually are just very empathic people. They care about people, but it's just they're being taken advantage of being a caring person. So they themselves, it doesn't mean not being caring, but learning to set boundaries with people that don't care about you.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a personal example of this one. My father would be someone who would very likely, he kind of falls into this number one, right? Like has a hard time saying no to people. He has a hard time saying no to me, and it's about kind of strange stuff. And if you are that person, I'm going to give an example in just a second, but if you're that person that struggles to say no, then obviously it leaves room for narcissists to come in and just to make requests of you. So that's the first sign. That's the first warning area. And an example of this would be like, I would be at my father's house and I'd be on my laptop and I would simply say something like, "Hey Dad, do you by chance have the Wi-Fi password available?" And he's like, "Right now? You need it right now? Like right this minute?" And I go, "No, Dad, it's cool. Like just when you have a minute, it'd be great to get your," and he's like, "Well, I just hate saying no." I'm like, "Dad, it's okay. Like say no, or say I'll get it in a few minutes, or say whatever." He's like, I can't say no to you. I can't say." Why can't you say no? So for him, saying no was attached to this like guilt, like I can't say no to my son for whatever reason. But I thought that was a very strange thing.
So he was angry about it because he couldn't say no to you?
Yeah, so he got to a place in his life where I think he always struggled with no, right? With telling anybody no. So later in life, I think he just gets frustrated now. He just gets frustrated when he gets asked something because he can't say no. And so it just leads to this like kind of, it looks like anger, but in reality it's just like he doesn't know how to say no.
That's a really good point because it's not like people could look at a distance and be like, oh, he's kind of being a jerk, but it's just he's really empathic, and he's struggling with not being able to do something for somebody else.
Yeah, he's hyper empathic. And that's kind of where I developed my oversensitivity too, right? My dad is the kind of person that when I'm there, he'd be like, "Are you hungry?" No, Dad, I'm good. Are you sure? I'm good, Dad. I can make a salad. Do you feel like a salad? Not, no, Dad, I'm good. Do you want something to drink? No, Dad. If I need anything, I'll get it myself. Like he is the constant caretaker and always like trying to solve, to problem solve in any of these dynamics to make sure that you're happy. So that to me is that first indicator of someone who is likely to be used is the empath, the person that struggles to say no. If you feel a sense of guilt, if you feel like that's not okay to say no, then really being used is going to come down to who are you choosing to be around you. Because as soon as you get a narcissist to stand next to you when you can't say no, of course they're going to, they're going to use you.
Yeah, and I think once again the positive of this is the fact that you're a very highly empathic person, but the negative component of this is that you are using other people as well, in the sense that you're trying to solve your problems through other people and you're not directly solving your own problems.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of this ebb and flow take.
Yeah.
Like I could look at myself, like when I was going through schooling and I was at internships and my identity was being the problem solver. And I would have a lot of narcissistic friends around me. And it would just be this kind of one-sided, like I'd offer therapeutic services basically. Right. And then I had to realize that the reason I was doing that was because I was also selfishly trying to indirectly solve my own problems at the same time.
Yeah,
so that's the negative part of it. So I had empathy, but I also had my own things that I was trying to indirectly do at a distance.
So some of the issues that come with this, right, is this lack of independence, but also this nature to over-sacrifice in these situations.
But once again, it sounds like it's a heroic thing, but if you break it down, I don't think it is. I think most people do that because for me at that space in time, I wasn't being independent, right? Because I needed to establish independence. That's why these narcissistic people were like examples of, I need to be more independent. And then second, I need to directly solve my problems instead of doing it at this emotional distance of trying to solve other people's problems. And once I owned that, the empathy stayed, but then at the same time, my desire and my boundaries started to become more firm.
Yeah. Why is it that an empath or a person that is kind of more in this space can be attracted to narcissistic individuals?
Well, usually like if you look at the family dynamics, the empathic person, like when there's all these family problems going on, the people that have low empathy will be like, hey, it's not my problem. I'm just going to take care of my stuff. Whereas a high empathy kid will be like, how can we solve all of this so that everyone can be happy? So that it's a mixture of like wanting the good for everyone, but also not having good boundaries at the same time.
Yeah. It also seems like it stems from, I found that I personally have sought out many narcissistic relationships. There's something about it that like I kind of feel drawn to. And I think a part of it has to do with, the way that you, whatever household you're growing up in, I would say that my father became highly empathic towards me later in my youth, probably like, 20s. Then he kind of became that very doting kind of father. But early on it was, I think he was worried about me not doing well in school and not being successful and all those things. So it was more like impressing. I was constantly impressing. I was constantly trying to like, please and to make him happy and to do whatever it took. And in some cases, like it might even kind of cross the line where I was doing things like just to make sure that when he got home at the end of a work day, like he was happy. It was just me and my dad until I was like 14 years old. So I was almost like the caretaker of the home, in addition to being like, a child. So I wanted to make sure like when dad got home, more so out of kind of a healthy fear of like, I don't want dad to get angry with me, upset that anything's not in its place. It's not organized or whatever it might be. I'm even going to make dinner for dad. But when I would meet narcissistic individuals later in my life, it felt natural, normal for me to go back and fall into this role of pleasing again. because it's what I grew up with. It felt like, and it almost like, to a certain degree, I almost envied the narcissist, where it's like, I like the fact that they, are confident and they take what they want and they kind of do this. I want to be more of that. So there's this, and we see this too, I think, in our clients and our case studies, is that we see that these early childhood relationships, they kind of get mirrored. And we can kind of tend to fall back into those patterns that were very common for us.
Oh, absolutely. And basically you brought up the component is that if you're in a household where love is conditional and moment by moment you believe that you may lose love, that's where that lack of independence and that fear of losing love comes from, right? And then with the narcissistic person, for me personally, instead of being like, man, I'm being taken advantage of, like you were saying, I had to be like, man, there are lessons for me that I need to be more independent. Mm-hmm. I need to be more assertive about who I am. I need to care more about myself. Mm-hmm. And once I took that lesson, then the boundaries started to get a lot better.
Yeah. So I guess our number one thing then is, if you're kind of the quintessential nice guy, nice girl, the person that struggles to say no, then that's kind of the first warning sign of like, you're likely to be someone who is in situations where you will get used. Now it simply comes down to who you choose to surround yourself with.
But also not blanketing and saying that, oh, I'm just a wholly good person. You are a good person, but the other component is recognizing that you need to be more independent, and you're probably trying to indirectly solve problems through other people.
For sure. And that's the weird thing, is that there's a book actually called No More Mr. Nice Guy. Have you heard of that book?
Yeah. You let me know.
Did I mention it?
Yeah.
It's a great book, but it kind of talks about this whole idea of what they're really talking about is attachment theory and kind of this anxious attachment that we develop, right, growing up. And we need to do an episode on just attachment theory. But the main concept that I wanted to bring up was this quintessential nice guy, nice girl complex. It's not a person actually being nice. It's a person being manipulative to get kind of the things that they want. You're doing those things because it makes you feel good. And you have a tendency to kind of think of yourself and grandize as like, I'm so nice and I'm doing all these gestures. But in reality, you're doing it because you expect something in return. You're doing it because you want to feel good about yourself. You're doing it because you're trying to solve problems by taking care of others. You're doing it for yourself, not necessarily out of some, wholehearted conviction to help someone else.
Yeah, like in that example, you're just an inverse narcissist. Mm-hmm. You just want to be seen as a good person, but indirectly you're manipulating, controlling indirectly instead of being more direct.
Yeah.
Like the narcissist.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay, so moving to point number 2, I guess. So the first thing is understanding where you stand. If you're asking this question, if you are by nature empathic, if you are the nice guy, the nice girl, you already know that this is going to be a potential area of concern, right? That's your first thing.
Absolutely.
Now, I guess we're talking about how do you recognize the people that would potentially be taking advantage? And what we're really looking at is the narcissist. Because when you put two empaths together, like if you put me and my father together now at this point, he's going to be overly engaged trying to please me, and I'm going to be overly engaged saying no, right? I'm good, Dad. I'm good. You do your thing, Dad. I'm good. But you put my dad with, if I were the narcissist, I would just say yes to everything. Yeah.
And just keep taking.
Yeah, I would keep taking.
Yeah.
So sign number 2 would be like, now understanding the other person is going to this, when the person asks you for things, there is no hesitation. They're very direct with what they want. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So usually like if you're, if you have some form of empathy towards someone, like, if I asked you for something, Pye, I'd be like, man, I know you're really busy and I know this is taking a lot of time. I would demonstrate that I understand that this is difficult for you, or it's a challenge for you to make the sacrifice for me. Mm-hmm. There'd be some level of concession. A narcissist doesn't do that. They'll just be like, hey, I need this, man. I'm short $50, man. I need $50. Pye, I need $50. Like it's 9 a.m. Yeah. How's it going, man? I need $50, bro. It's like that. It's just very direct and it's very upfront. I don't really think about your feelings at all. I just say what I want.
And what do you even, when you say no to somebody like that, what is the typical response you might expect?
It's passive aggressive. It's like, what are you doing? How could you do this to me? So It goes from victimhood to then just straight up anger and blaming.
Yeah.
You're such an asshole, Pye. It's only $50. I can't believe you did this. I called you. You know how much courage it takes for me to ask? What kind of jerk are you? Just give me the money, man. Like that kind of stuff. It goes to this extreme.
Yeah. I had one instance of a not a I don't know if I would say a close friend, but a friend basically dumping an emotional text on me at like 11 p.m. And I had to work the next day, so my phone's usually on do not disturb. So when I go to sleep, I'm not gonna be woken up by anything. But I wake up the next morning and it's the first thing that I read, like before I go and have a long day of work ahead of me. And it's pretty nasty. It's like you could tell that this person was clearly drunk when they wrote this, and it just lays into me about how I'm this, how I'm that. And then I responded and I go, I don't know what gossip that you heard. Sorry you feel the way that you do. Let me know when you have time to chat. And basically this whole thing was based on someone triangulating and saying something that was never actually said. Then he went off on it. But you could see that all that mattered in that moment was the way that he felt. And it was fully projected. And then when I texted back and said, let me know when you have time to chat, I got a green message. You know what that means on an iPhone, right?
No.
Well, if we're both Apple users and I end up getting a green message, that means he blocked me. And sure enough, he actually blocked the message. And I was thinking, like, that's very interesting. Like, it's a very hyper narcissistic thing to do, to just lay out exactly, you tell your side of this story, how you think the person's an asshole, a dick, and they don't even get a chance to respond. And I thought that's a very typical kind of narcissistic response to something.
No, I agree. And then it's very passive aggressive at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's all about their feelings and nothing about yours. I mean, similarly, I remember I was helping a friend out because they were going through some like major family issues. Like one of the family members was like they had a drug addiction problem. So like kind of did like an intervention, and I was kind of there for them because they were really struggling. And then after, like, I was like, man, I'm really tired. I think I need a break.
Mm-hmm.
Like that guy just went off on me, and he's like, how can you do that? Look at what's happening with my family. How can you think about yourself like that? And that's when I was like, okay, that's it, man. I cut it off.
Yeah.
Because like, this is ridiculous, man. Like if you're just going to think that way, it's not even worth it.
No. And that it's very typical of that type of behavior, where not only in their requests, they're very one-sided. They don't see what they're asking. They only see an expectation of what you should be doing. So there's no like, when I call a friend, even if it's just to kind of, shoot the shit for a little bit, I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to say, yo, what's up, dude? Nothing important. You got a few minutes? Or, whatever you got to say. But like at the beginning of the call, I'm like, hey, dude, just calling to chat. If you're free. If not, that's cool. That's a typical way of someone who respects someone else's time and kind of those boundaries. But when there's phone calls and a person just dives straight into something, again, it's kind of a warning sign of like,
it's a red flag, and it's a sign of no respect and no empathy towards you whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to say, actually, you have, for number 3, you have when you ask them something, they immediately say no and treat it as a big inconvenience.
Yeah. So once again, if you have a narcissistic friend and then you're doing all these things for them and you're like, hey man, like can you help me move this weekend? Move? What are you talking about, man? I got so much work to do this week. How can you even ask me?
Yeah.
So they make a big deal about it, even though you've done like 10 things for them and then you're asking for one thing in return. They act as if you're asking them for the whole world.
Yeah. Or the other side of it is like, they'll say yes initially. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes down to actually doing it, they have an excuse for why they can't.
They'll flake. And then it won't be one time. It'll be a second time, a third time, a fourth. They'll always flake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's not about them.
Yeah, that one's an especially frustrating one.
How so?
I guess I've not only seen this in so many of our situations, our case studies, but personally, these are all things that I very much relate to. Like I have been that person, that quintessential nice guy per se. And again, going back to it, it wasn't necessarily because I was wanting to be nice in those scenarios. It was because I wanted to be liked, right? So I'm doing it out of this kind of selfish interest. But in so many cases, I would do things for friends. And then when it came to me asking for something, can you take me to the airport? Hey, can you help me to do this? I just need to move this one piece of furniture upstairs. Like, can you help me out? I would get no's. Like, I can't do that, man. Or I would get a yes. And then just before, hey man, like, it makes more sense for you just to like grab an Uber if that's cool. I mean, dude, I took you to the airport. And I know I shouldn't be thinking that, but it's like, I would think to myself, and this goes back to the manipulation, right? Because I would think to myself, man, I've taken you to the airport so many times because I just wanted to hang out and I'm a nice guy. And you won't do the same thing. And so there's a frustration there because on the one hand, you're kind of like, again, going back to, I'm such a nice person. Why won't you do this for me? It's this expectation that I set based on that, me doing it for them. And then coming later on to realize that, okay, first of all, me doing it because I'm hoping to later cash in or to say like, hey, I did this for you, or that means that I really didn't do it just to be nice. That means I did it for some manipulative reason. So that was frustrating on one hand to realize that I'm not actually just being nice when I'm doing those things. The other side of it was like, okay, nor am I setting proper boundaries.
Well, the other thing too is I remember being in those situations and then they would say no. And then I would get mad and then we would not talk and then talk again. And I'd be like, oh, I'm being a jerk. I was asking too much. Like they were just being inconvenienced. And then I would just jump right back in.
Yeah.
So I go through the cycle of like mad, don't get what I want. It's not an equal relationship. And then just jump back in and start giving all over again.
Yeah. Well, number 4 that we had was essentially the reactions when we do bring up, when a person brings up that the relationship is one-sided, the person that is using is generally going to have very harsh reactions to it.
Yeah. So, in psychology, they call it dichotomous thinking. And then they'll go from one extreme of being the victim. Do you know how hard this is for me? Can you realize what I'm going through right now? And then play the victim card, and then they'll flip-flop and then just start attacking you and accusing you as being a horrible, terrible person.
Yeah.
And there is no in-between. It just goes from they're the victim to you're the worst person in the world. And you're just going on this teeter-totter with this person back and forth.
Well, there's a certain level of insanity of even like trying to broach this topic with that person, right? Because what we said thus far is if you are worried about being used, then likely you are a people pleaser. Like we both, I think we are reformed people pleasers.
We are reformed.
But you are already this person. You've already engaged in relationships with people that are narcissistic, who only choose themselves, who struggle to empathize, who can't, relate to you. And you focus on making them happy and stuff. We already know that when we ask for something, they're going to say no to it, or they're going to flake. They're going to say yes and then flake later. And then we go to say, this is a one-sided conversation, as if expecting them to suddenly wake up. That's the insane part to me. Like, to even broach this subject with that individual is ridiculous because they don't have the ability to even comprehend that side of the story.
But this is where I think the inverse narcissism comes into play, because I think for me, I would think, man, I think I could change this person, or this person will change.
What is inverse narcissism?
Like narcissism is like direct, no empathy, and you're just doing things for, like, you're overtly like, I'm just doing things for me.
Yeah.
An inverse narcissist, in this example, I think the people pleasing and all of that is, there's a level of empathy and there's goodness inside, but there's also this desire of indirectly trying to portray yourself as a good person, and then indirectly trying to control people at the same time. Like the narcissist is directly trying to control you.
Yeah.
Whereas in this scenario, you're indirectly trying to control other people at the same time.
Yeah.
And then the narcissist is the ultimate challenge of control.
But my point is, why would we even bring this subject up to the narcissist? That to me is already crazy. The fact that you would say, and I've done this before. We have, countless examples of people that have done this before, where they go to the person, they're like, this is a one-sided relationship. And you're like, let's have a empathetic conversation with a person who has no empathy.
But that's my point though. But in your mind, like when you kept staying and you kept in the past, like you kept trying to build that relationship, didn't part of you think like, I think I'm getting to this person. I think they're going to change it. And then that is my point. Like for me, I think the reason part of why people stay in this dynamic is they're not embracing their own level of narcissism. Like I had to embrace mine, thinking I'm indirectly trying to control this person too. They're the one controlling me, but I can't do it back.
True. You kind of are, I see what you're saying. So you're kind of overvaluing your ability to change somebody else.
Yeah, the empathy. I'm like, I could change you too, man.
Yeah.
I could get you to come my way too.
Yeah. I had one instance of this. I'll go back. I'm going to take this one back to, high school. Let's go back.
Do it, man.
So my very first job, Burger King. I get the job in summer and I get my best friend a job there. I don't know if I've talked about this story yet on the podcast. This will be a recurring one. This is a deep-rooted trauma for me. Now, I had this best friend. We won't name names, but we need to give him a name. What should we call him? Let's call him Tom Brady.
Tom Brady.
Okay.
All right, you got it.
All right, Tom Brady. That's a person we can all love to hate. I'm just kidding. I love Tom Brady. Okay, so Tom, I get Tom a job at Burger King, and it's fantastic. And Tom, I would describe as like the perfect friend for me at that point in my life. He was the person that was kind of confident, kind of a social reject, but also just like cool about it. Like I do whatever the hell I want, and the quintessential narcissist, right? I do what I want. I don't care what other people think. And I love that about him. It made me more confident because I was another social reject, but I had no confidence and I had none of that. So we always had a blast together. Get him a job at Burger King. And then there's this girl. And she, at least from what I thought, was taking an interest in me. Now I was the typical, like, I was the friend zoned, the gal's best friend kind of person, right? But I didn't know I was friend zoned by all these ladies. I should have known. When I look back, it's one of those cringy things. Okay, so we need a name for the girl. What are we going to name her?
We could call her Giselle because he's married to Giselle, right?
Okay, Giselle. All right, but Giselle's probably a sweetheart, and so's Tom. So, like, I'm sorry that we're making you guys the bad guys in this, but you're the bad guys. So Giselle starts hitting on me, and I eventually go, hey, let's go golfing. Giselle goes, okay, cool. Let's make it a date. We make it a date and we go golfing. And during this date, Giselle's asking me to call Tom nonstop. Hey, you should get Tom out here. It'd be really fun if Tom joined us. And I'm dumb, sitting here thinking like, okay, yeah, Tom's kind of a fun guy, so maybe this would make sense to invite him out. After 3-4 times, she persuades me to bring Tom out. We're on like the 8th hole and we get back and there's Tom and we all start hanging out. We go to the driving range, and then once we get back in the car, Giselle hops in the back seat with Tom. And God damn it, I should have known better because it's Tom and Giselle, right? Like they just go get to. But on my date, Giselle starts holding Tom's hand in the back of my car. And I'm sitting there like, okay, I guess we go to dinner. And I become the chaperone and driver on what was my date. Now I'm driving them home and I'm just like processing. I don't even know what's happening right now. And by the time I drop them off, they're basically like almost making out in the backseat of my car. I don't say anything. I just drop them off silently, drive back home. And the next day I see them at work because we all work together at Burger King.
That's awkward, man.
Dude, there's nothing more awkward than that while you're frying goddamn chicken.
That is true.
Just like dropping, I had the fryers. So I was just like managing frying fries and frying chicken.
Well, Burger King, the motto was "Have it your way." So you were not having it your way.
I didn't have anything my way at that time.
Exactly.
No, I did have it my way when I saw them, and I go, "Do you guys even understand?" And I was like, "There is no other word for this. This was fucked up. Like, do you guys understand how fucked up that was?" We're gonna have to put in explicit conversation on
Parental
this episode.
advisory.
Parental advisory. There's no other word for that. That is completely messed up. And I explain it to them and they look at me like I'm the dumb one. And Giselle tells Tom, don't talk to Pye anymore. And he didn't. And like that, my best friend of, all of junior high was gone. In fact, he didn't call me back for, I think, about 1.5 years. And it was 1.5 years later when they showed up at my doorstep. Unbeknownst to me, Tom had almost like broken it off with Giselle a couple times. Now they're back together, but now that he's rekindling friendships. I don't know why I gave him this shot. This goes back to your point of like me thinking that I'm more influential than I am. Well, maybe it got to him. Maybe the fact of how messed up this was got to him. They actually break up. Tom's a mess. And this one time we're hanging out, Tom's still complaining about it a month after the fact. Can't even like just hang out without like talking about the love of his life. And I go, Tom, shut up, dude. Like, come on, man. She is not the love of your life. She's kind of a bitch. And we're playing video games and Tom throws his freaking remote at my head, like a PlayStation remote. Boom. And I'm again like, what the fuck, Tom? Like, what is going on, Tom? And Tom looks at me and goes, don't you get it, man? It's love. She was the love of my life. And I go, Tom, do you even know what was so effed up about that whole thing? Do you even get it? Like, after all this time? And he goes, he would always call me by my like name, but he would say it wrong intentionally. Another narcissistic. Like,
Yeah.
He'd be like, Payam. He would say it like,
that's
like
annoying.
I would, my name is Payam, but I go by Pye. But he would be like, Payam.
Oof.
It was love. You can't control what you do in love. That was the moment where I got over my own narcissism and I said, there is no changing this person.
Yeah.
I was 19 years old and I never hung out with him again. I was like, I'm good. I'm done. You have just shown me that I'm stupid. That your values never changed along this whole way. And we are two completely different people because I would never do that. And the fact that you don't even get it at this point. But I'm the stupid one for thinking that I could have changed you.
But it was painful, but it was a good lesson because you started creating your own independence at that point.
Started.
Started.
Didn't quite get there before I was married, but started.
But that is the level of frustration when you're dealing with someone that has no regard or for your well-being whatsoever. There's nothing you can do except just boundary setting and just let them be.
Yeah, and it goes back to all the things that we talked about, right? They do this crazy thing with no empathy whatsoever for anyone else. Then you bring it up and you say, this was insane. How did you do that? And then they are victimized. Well, how could you think that way?
Yeah.
Don't hang out with Pye anymore. He's a bad person. Like, you know, they've flipped the whole script of like, I'm the bad guy now. And then you go back to like the re-explanation of it and trying to get them to understand. And once again,
it's pointless. It's just
I'm the bad guy because I'm now like shitting on what was, you know, the love of his life.
It's a waste of time. I mean, there's degrees to narcissism. Like, this is kind of gross. So I think the parental advisory sticker applies. But like, the whole point of a narcissist is there was this one guy, he was antisocial, which is like a criminal mentality, which is narcissism and you're a criminal, right?
Yeah.
And then this guy, I was doing an assessment. He actually came out of prison. This a while ago. And the reason he was out of prison was because he was having sex with his mother. And then,
Wait, so he got out of, wait, what? He got out of prison to have sex with his mother?
He was having sex with his mother.
Oh.
And then the question was like, why are you having sex with your mother? This guy was like a sexaholic, right? And his answer was like, I just need it. And I go, do you ever think about the effects that this has on your mother and the fact that she's mentally ill? No, man, I just need it. Right. So this guy is like straight up like any explanation. Do you realize the person that you're with that you stole from, how much that hurt them? Like you kind of had sex with them, you forced sex, and so what does that have to do with me, man? I just need the money.
Well, that's basically our fifth point, right? Which is
the level of narcissism. And
they struggle to empathize.
And then like you're attacking me, bro. He's like, you're attacking me. And then I became like his target, right? Versus I had to flip the script and just be like, hey man, do you realize how much trouble you got into when you had sex with your mom? And that's why like it led you to all these things. And then he started like, yeah, man, I see it now. Do you realize you got arrested after you took the wallet? And then, I stopped talking about like empathy. It was just like, dude, you got affected really bad, dude. I mean, you want to make better decisions. And he was like, yeah, man, I do. And then he started connecting because it all became about him. And that's the whole point. Like, I'm not,
So going to this number 5 is basically they struggle to empathize, which means that what you're saying is that from the therapist standpoint, the only way that you can get a message across to them is to not relay that message in other people's terms, because then they can't empathize with those terms.
At all.
But you have to relate it to them.
Yeah.
Do you realize that? I can't believe that you had to say that. Say it again.
Do you realize that having sex with your mom, like how you got arrested and all these things? Yeah, I could see that.
Do you realize
That
how
was
it's affected you?
that was the switch.
It's like, now that you put it that way.
Or like Tom Brady, like, do you realize when you're hurting and then this thing is going astray, can you relate to the fact that maybe that's what I was struggling? Then there might be some connection because he could relate it to his own feelings.
I did not have that tool until the past year. So,
but it's just crazy. But it's just crazy. Like that's how narcissism works. Like it's just about them and them only.
Yeah. And in the light of like, that struggling to empathize, they're also going to tend to think that their approach, their solutions are the right ones for you, right? When you, in any of these instances,
they know what's best for everybody.
They know what's best for you, what's best for them. It was love, man. There was nothing I could do about it. When you find love, bam. You're gonna just know.
You're gonna throw remotes too, my man, because then you'll realize that you found true love.
I was like, A, this is an expensive remote. B, this is my head, bro.
That's crazy, man.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
But
Tom Brady's a jerk, man.
Tom Brady's a jerk.
Yeah, man. Same with Giselle too,
Giselle's
man. Damn both of you, man.
Both of them are tools, man.
Damn TB12, man.
But the real Tom Brady and Giselle, we love you. No, I think those are all really great, areas to kind of understand. And so to know, like, if you're being used, I would summarize this all up. So just to kind of, because I have one extra thing that I wanted to add to this. So we know that you struggle to say no. You are the empathetic person. You're the person that is going to be in the situation to begin with. That's the first sign. The next thing is that, the other person or the people around you, they're going to ask for things without hesitation, without any regard for you, your time, that kind of stuff. So that's the next sign. Next warning sign is like when you ask them for something in return, they're going to flake. They're going to say no. They're going to do whatever. And they're going to make it like this inconvenience, like you're going too far. Then when you bring up the fact that you're unhappy with it, or that it's a one-way relationship, or that this isn't cool, or that this is whatever it might be, they're going to respond either aggressively or passive-aggressively and not really be able to empathize at all, because that's the final piece there, is that they struggle to empathize. They can't empathize. So the last thing I'm going to say to kind of put this all together in terms of like, how do you know you're being used, goes back to the idea of like emotional energy. If you feel like a healthy relationship, you should kind of be energized by. Like when I spend time with you, or if I spend time with any of my friends that are healthy, I come away from that experience feeling like I benefited, you benefited, I have more energy, I'm excited, I'm all those things. But in this kind of like one-way relationship, you don't get that. What you typically feel is drained. You typically feel like, okay, it's give, and there is no receive. And so you can kind of look at it from the standpoint of like, how's your emotional energy?
And it's also constantly anxiety provoking because you're constantly nervous being in that relationship dynamic.
Yeah, that it might end, or that, it might not.
Because it's not stable. Anything that's one-sided is an unstable relationship.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that's it for us. We got into some fun stories on this one.
Yeah, it was a good one, man.
Yeah. Had fun with that.
Yeah.
For those that are listening, if you guys would like to help us out, you can hop onto iTunes, find the 12-Week Relationship Podcast. If we've been helpful to you, we'd love for you to leave us a positive review. Negative reviews are not helpful, as I have said before. But look, we do accept critique. We accept comments, questions. You guys can find us.
DM them. Yeah.
At 12-Week Relationships on Instagram. Yeah. And like today's episode, this was a community-driven question. So we love this type of stuff. We get to kind of dive deep into your specific questions. In the meantime, Dr. Glen's, his list of clients is growing very quickly. And by probably early next year, we're going to have a wait list for individual consults. So if you want individual or couples coaching, jump on to 12weekrelationships.com, sign up for a free 15-minute consult before there's essentially a wait list to begin meeting with him. And I think that's it for us. Do we have anything else?
I think that's it.
Yeah. Well, we hope to see you guys back here, same time, same place, next time.
Thank you.